Hello and welcome to today's webinar, the 2023 State of Beverage Alcohol Compliance. My name is Mimi and I'll be your host. Today we are covering where beverage alcohol businesses are selling, how businesses in the industry are managing tax compliance, and which compliance goals and barriers they are up against. Before we dive in today, a couple of housekeeping items. Just a friendly reminder that Avalara cannot provide legal tax advice, but we will answer as best as we can. And on your screen now is our safe harbor policy. So please take a moment to review that while I continue with some additional housekeeping notes. We are recording today's event, so if you want to listen to it again and share it with a colleague, you'll receive the recording within the next 24 hours. The console you're looking at can be customized, so feel free to move or resize the windows if you'd like. The additional resources section contains related resources. If there are any that you'd like to check out, go ahead and click on them now, as the console will automatically close at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Ask a Question box. We will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A time at the end of the presentation. You may also submit webinar troubleshooting questions. The button down at the bottom with the little chat bubbles is for our group chat. This will pop up right under the video. We encourage you all to introduce yourself and make connections with fellow Avalara customers. I'd love to know where everyone is tuning in from. Hello from Brooklyn, New York. We put in the group chat where you're watching from. If you have any technical issues, there's a question mark icon at the box, or reach out during the Ask a Question box. Excuse me. All right, so let's meet today's presenters. First up, we have Michael Dominguez, Senior Strategic Alliance Manager of Beverage Alcohol at Avalara. Michael, can you please take a second to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mimi. Again, my name is Michael Dominguez, and I manage the strategic relationships with Avalara's key wine e-commerce partners. I have more than 10 years of leadership in beverage alcohol operations, management, and sales, with even a year of compliance management under my belt. I really enjoy leveraging my knowledge and experience in the beverage alcohol industry to help beverage alcohol companies streamline their operations with the help of our partners. I currently reside in Santa Monica, California. I enjoy time with my family, visiting the beach, and I really appreciate a nice glass of sparkling wine.
Very fun. We're also joined by Ashley Craig, Senior Compliance Analyst at Avalara. Ashley, do you mind introducing yourself as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mimi. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name's Ashley Craig, and I work on the products and licensing team here at Avalara. I've been with Avalara for just over a year now. Previously, for over 13 years, I worked in the wine industry where I'm located here in Paso Robles, California, and managed many different areas within the business, but also handled the compliance for the winery I worked for. So I do relate and completely understand the complexity and challenges we are faced with around compliance. Thank you all again for having me today.
Great. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
Great, thank you so much, Mimi. So this is the overview today that we're going to cover. I'm briefly going to review the beverage alcohol industry, kind of the state of the industry, if you will, where beverage alcohol businesses are selling, compliance challenges, and how businesses are managing tax compliance, including compliance goals and barriers from different beverage alcohol companies. We're going to follow up at the end with Avalara, how Avalara can help you manage your beverage alcohol tax compliance needs. So the beverage alcohol industry has grown exceptionally exponentially in recent decades. There are now over 6,600 operating wineries and 1,900 operating distilleries in the United States, according to the US Treasury Department. While two breweries dominate the US market, the US Treasury consumers' taste for craft brews has helped drive up the number of small producers on the scene. Today, there are more than 6,400 operating breweries, a colossal jump from the fewer than 100 that existed in the early 1980s. Data from the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States shows that spirits industry revenue grew to $35.8 billion in 2021, driven by restaurant reopenings, consumer demand for premium products, and an increase in online sales for in-home consumption. Meanwhile, the Brewers Association valued the US beer market at $100 billion in 2021, with small and independent brewers accounting for just under 27% of the total at $26.8 billion. So when we look at e-commerce sales, direct-to-consumer shipping played a significant role in how beverage alcohol businesses fared during the pandemic. Annual revenues from online sales of alcohol in the United States rose 28% to $14.95 billion in 2021, and are projected to grow an additional $4 billion by 2027. It is clear that during the pandemic, beverage alcohol companies learned the value of omni-channel sales and the importance of e-commerce. With a challenging economic environment and rising inflation costs, it is important for beverage alcohol companies to continually reevaluate their e-commerce and other sales channels. One of the major challenges facing direct consumer shipping in the e-commerce world is the importance of doing real-time shipping verification on all direct-to-consumer alcohol sales, which brings us now to the question of where exactly can alcohol be shipped throughout the United States? These four maps provide a good overview of where wineries, breweries, distilleries, and retailers can ship alcohol, showcasing the percentage of the population that can receive wine, beer, or spirits direct to consumer by state and population. As you can see, the majority of states, excluding Utah and Mississippi, you can ship wine to. Compliance challenges frequently go hand in hand with growth. As beverage alcohol businesses expand product lines and sell into new markets, they must adhere to numerous government regulations. For example, a small winery that ships just a single bottle to a customer in a new state must register to collect and remit tax there. Managing exemptions and filing returns for sales tax, excise tax, markup tax, as well as shipment reports can place an enormous burden on departments responsible for tax compliance. Non-compliance can take a bite out of a company's bottom line. For instance, businesses that fail to verify a purchaser's age or ensure a sales transaction complies with local shipping laws can also face penalties. As mentioned earlier, e-commerce for bev-al companies took off like a rocket ship during the pandemic, but we need to ask ourselves where beverage alcohol businesses are selling. What are the major sales channels for beverage alcohol products? Brick and mortar retail locations continue to be the most prevalent sales channel used by beverage alcohol businesses, but online platforms increasingly play an important role in how they sell their products, hence the importance of omnichannel. According to survey respondents, 82% of businesses sell alcohol on their own website, while 37% use other e-commerce platforms, and a third sell on marketplaces. So it is critical for bev-al companies to first understand your current sales channels and platforms so you can better compare your channel strategy to your peers and competitors. This chart provides a more detailed breakout of where beverage alcohol businesses are selling, with the physical brick and mortar locations again at the top of the chart, all the way down to social media networks at the bottom of the chart. The majority of the beverage alcohol business focus their sales channels on their own brick and mortar locations and their company's e-commerce website. Physical retail locations in the wine world include tasting rooms. Depending on the state where you reside, you could have multiple tasting rooms depending on your wine grower's license and your state's wine grower licensing requirements. Of note, according to a recent study, third-party marketplace sales will account for 59% of all global e-commerce, but this is across all industries by 2027. So I definitely see an increase in marketplace as an important channel for your sales. So it behooves BevAl companies to explore and constantly reevaluate these different channels and platforms for selling alcohol to keep up to speed on different trends and how to maximize sales for various channels and platforms. Since we now know the various sales channels and platforms where the BevAl industry is selling alcohol, it's important to understand some of the industry compliance challenges. Not surprisingly, Beverage Alcohol Business Surveyed reported a myriad of sales and use tax compliance challenges. All sectors indicated that they have a hard time keeping track of changing state and local rates, with wineries at 54% and retailers who sell off-premise at 50% most likely to voice this as their top pain point. Distilleries at 46% and wineries at 49% were most likely to report obstacles around knowing where they should register for their sales tax permits. In addition, 45% of all companies surveyed said that they have difficulties complying with DTC shipping regulations and adhering to regulations related to trade and marketing practices. The Potentiate survey that we partnered with here at Avalara also revealed that two compliance pain points for companies, including complying with regulations related to trade and marketing practices, complying with direct-to-consumer shipping regulations, specifically looking at volume limits. For instance, certain states have a volume requirement for how much wine you could ship to a consumer, DTC, dry areas, and age verification. Other compliance challenges in priority order from the survey were registering, revising, and renewing product registrations at the federal or the COLAs, the Certificate of Label Approval, and at the state level for product registrations. I can personally tell you that running a large winery that was approaching 200,000 cases at the time, we were registered to ship to most direct-to-consumer states and wholesale, but it was always a nail biter trying to make sure that we had our COLA in time for when we were bottling and for where we can hit sales and release our SKUs into the market. So knowing the proper alcohol tax rates to change, renewing your licensing and bonds, and knowing when and how to license are top challenges for BevAl compliance. So now we have a good understanding now of compliance challenges in the BevAl industry. We need to turn our attention to how BevAl businesses are managing their tax compliance. So more beverage alcohol businesses handle tax compliance in-house than outsource to a third party. So a lot of times when you're looking at wineries, let's say 10, 20,000 cases, it depends really on your size. You usually will have an accounting manager or an accountant who is able to address those in-house compliance issues. Maybe they file their tax and returns. And then for compliance is handled for their internal accounting or finance department at 45% of businesses, which I mentioned, and 28% have a dedicated tax department. Having worked for a large winery, we all wear many, many different hats. So the way I like to look at automation versus in-house is if you can free up and rely more on automation and outsourcing your compliance, that just gives you more of an opportunity to explore different ways to generate revenue for your winery, brewery, or distillery. Said also wineries were less likely than breweries and distilleries to automate tax and more likely to use manual methods. This could be why wineries are spending more time on compliance. Conversely, distilleries were most likely to have automated compliance and spent the least time on tax management. BevAl companies manage tax compliance differently. But on an aggregate basis, companies are spending an average of 50 hours per week on tax management and compliance. This includes time spent on beverage alcohol licensing, registering products and renewals, calculating beverage alcohol taxes, and preparing and filing beverage alcohol returns. Wineries spend more time and dedicate more people to these activities than breweries and distilleries, which is to be expected given that breweries and distilleries can ship DTC to far fewer states, as you saw in those previous maps, than wineries. From personal experience of calculating beverage alcohol taxes, it is very difficult and very time-consuming to navigate the 12,000 plus jurisdictions across the United States. I worked extensively with our accountant to ensure timely and proper filing, where my time could have been better perhaps spent in production or sales, growing the revenue of the winery. In another partnership with Potentiate, in 2021, we looked at a separate study on the cost of manual compliance. Of note, this report surveyed a variety of small and medium-sized businesses in a number of different industries. So we wanted to share that actual cost of compliance. You could see there that small and medium-sized businesses spent $14,811 per month managing tax compliance. And then retailers reported an even greater cost at $24,032 per month. Companies that were audited spent an average of 35 hours or $3,640 responding to and managing the audit process. So when you're looking and you're running your winery, brewery, or distillery, it's always important to constantly be reviewing your cost of compliance. Do you have a salaried employee, a full-time employee who's taking care of that for you? And how does that compare against outsourcing your compliance? So this chart depicts the monthly hours spent on tax compliance. And I find this chart really interesting because it's very difficult for small and medium-sized businesses, because if you look at the chart, those small and medium-sized businesses are spending over $5,000 more than enterprise businesses on an average on tax compliance. And when you look at the mean fully burdened hourly rate, they're spending about $10 more. So this time and money is spent on activities for tax compliance that include identifying state sales tax and filing requirements, tax rates and calculations, and tax returns. And I can tell you that from at a personal level and managing the large winery that I did and doing compliance management for a year, this took a majority of our time, is figuring out the sales requirements, whether reporting was monthly or quarterly, making sure that we had the right tax rates and sales tax calculations. So the cost of compliance with the lens spend per month, again, are much higher for these small and medium-sized businesses. And it could be due to these enterprise businesses have better technology integrations that help automate the process and bring down the cost of compliance. So now that we've seen some of the compliance challenges in the BevAlc space, it's time to address what are the industry's compliance goals and barriers. Among all companies surveyed, 45% reported they evaluate their tax compliance methods and solutions for possible changes or upgrades every 2 to 3 years. And 34% evaluate every 4 to 5 years, with only 20% claiming to evaluate at least annually. So it's important to understand your current tax compliance architecture and where there may be opportunities to automate or incorporate technology with partners and integrations. You may even want to run the numbers and every 2 years or maybe annually to see how it pencils out to outsource your manual compliance, especially, as we mentioned earlier, if you're a small or medium-sized business. So your team can focus on revenue-generating activities in a very competitive beverage alcohol market. The competition in the beverage alcohol market is very fierce, especially nowadays due to evolving consumer tastes, tough economic conditions, and limited overall growth, especially in the wine segment. This chart depicts the primary compliance goals, with the highest goal of increasing efficiency and streamlining systems at 29%. So you could see there that in this Potentiate survey that I may not have mentioned earlier, but was conducted last year, Avalara had a partnership with Potentiate, a reputable survey company, and it surveyed hundreds of different beverage alcohol companies. And you can see the breakout there, and just at the top of the list being increasing those efficiencies and streamlining those systems. That was followed by reducing time and resources needed to achieve compliance at 21%, improving time to market, getting products to market faster, especially with the changing beverage alcohol landscape, is getting whether it be new packaging or hitting on a new consumer taste as quickly as possible. And you have to have your licenses and you have to be able to go to market in compliance. And then lastly, you could see mitigating compliance risk at 13%. These findings suggest businesses aren't evaluating compliance often enough. Most businesses are not keeping up with the pace of change that impact compliance and the issues that automation solves. As a result, businesses that put off reviewing their tax compliance methods and solutions every 2 years longer may be ill-prepared to manage the dynamic nature of tax compliance. The beverage alcohol industry faces enormous pressure to respond to rapidly changing regulations because it is so highly regulated, such as requirements related to sustainable practices, labeling and licensing, and reporting for DTC shippers that use fulfillment houses. Businesses have a greater need than ever before to stay on top of compliance challenges and automate in every area where they possibly can. So with these BevAl compliance challenges identified and from this potentiate study, along with the cost and time of compliance, this is a good time to explain how Avalara can help. Avalara for Beverage Alcohol provides a complete BevAl compliance solution to help you save money and better allocate your resources to create additional revenue streams for your BevAl business. Our professional compliance services include the top 3 circles on this diagram and include alcohol and tax licensing, product registration, and tax returns and reporting. Our AvaTax integrations with key BevAl e-commerce platforms help provide real-time rooftop-level sales tax calculations and accurate shipping verification for shipping direct to consumer. Avalara for Beverage Alcohol mitigates compliance risk from the complex labyrinth of industry and tax regulations. It reduces time and resources needed to achieve tax and regulatory compliance for beverage alcohol. It increases efficiencies and ease of use via seamless integrations across the BevAlc industry's common point of sale, e-commerce, ERP, and wine club management applications. And Avalara for Beverage Alcohol is this complete compliance solution designed to meet the needs of wineries, breweries, distilleries, alcohol retailers, importers, alcohol marketplaces, and alcohol delivery businesses. Avalara for Beverage Alcohol automates, again, multi-tax calculation, exception certificate management, licensing, product registration, returns preparation, reporting, and remittance. Avalara has partnerships and integrations with the companies listed on this slide. So please contact us so we can help you streamline your processes. Again, as a reminder, that was one of the top goals of this potentiate survey that beverage alcohol companies had, was they wanted to streamline their processes and become more efficient. We have some great technology partners. Every BevAl company is a little different. And so we, again, have these partnerships and would love to talk to you. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Ashley for licensing.
Great, thank you, Michael. That was a fantastic presentation. I don't know about you all, but if Michael's portion did not excite you on all Avalara can do and offer, I'm sure hoping my much smaller portion of the presentation regarding license modifications and how we can partner together with you to help on these types of extremely time-consuming updates will. To start things off, I'm going to be doing a high-level overview on what license modifications are, and if you may need assistance with a current change or one may arise in the future, how we here at Avalara can help. So what is a license modification? Well, Avalara defines a license modification as a change in the current information a jurisdiction holds on file for your business. So you may be asking, well, when might a modification project be needed? Well, let's say you have some sort of an address update, maybe your mailing address, your premise address, or even your shipping location address changes. A few states do have you hold the license for the address alcohol is shipped from into the state. Maybe the update is more business related. So maybe your legal name has changed, your DBA name changes, maybe your FEIN number changes, or maybe even you change the bond company that you're working with. We would need to supply jurisdictions with the new bonds issued through the new surety. Or maybe you're wanting to cancel licenses in a particular jurisdiction. So to touch on this one just a bit more, Avalara will close out licenses for clients. We will then also close out any associated bonds and COAs that may be attached to the license we're closing out for you. We then also work closely with our reporting team to ensure all final returns are processed for you. So all sales and excise accounts are closed out properly. And that would of course be if Avalara in fact handles your returns. Maybe the update is more of a personal business update. So maybe a reorganization of the business, maybe an officer has been updated, maybe a manager changes, maybe it's more an ownership change or update. So maybe a percentage of ownership for an officer changes, maybe a title for an officer has changed. These are all items that you would need to update the states you're operating in with. A few commonly overlooked items I feel are typically based around ownership updates. Maybe there's a death of an interest holder, a creation of a trust, maybe a trustee or beneficiary changes. There could be a divorce or even a new marriage. Many states are interested in the current owner, officer, partner information. And if this changes, there are a handful of states we would need to notify. So now you may be asking, how does the process of making an update work? Well, there's really 3 steps or phases that we go through. We verify the change taking place. We gather all the needed items to allow for the change to take place. And then we process the update with the jurisdictions. So verifying the change. We never want to just trust information we've been given, but always verify any changes taking place with our clients before we begin a new project. License modifications are a lot of cross-team collaboration amongst our license modifications team, the client's CAM, and the client themselves. We always review the needed updates with our clients to ensure we have accurate, up-to-date information to begin the project. Next, we're going to gather all needed requirements. If this is an organizational change, let's say, we want to ensure we have updated organizational documents supporting that change. We will then need an updated operating state license and TTB permit listing the updated information. These 2 documents are typically super important for showing a legal name change, a DBA name update, or maybe a premise address update. Avalara then also obtains and preps all required state forms for the jurisdictions to allow for updates to be made. And then lastly, we process the updates with the jurisdictions. We'll notify all states your business operates in with the needed update. A few states, depending on the type of change, will require a new license application. Avalara will handle the processing of the new application on your behalf and manage the closure of the old permit once the new permit with corrected information is received. Now hopping over to the next slide here. So now you may be thinking, well, I've had a change take place recently. So what are the needed steps for our business to take to allow for Avalara to begin a license modifications project for us? Well, step 1 is simply to email your change into bevalc@avalara.com. Our triage team will route your request to your CAM, who's your customer account manager. In your initial email, we just ask that you clearly define the type of change. So for example, our premise address has changed from 1234 Main Street to 2353 Avalara Boulevard. Please advise Avalara if Avalara is to handle your TTB and California ABC updates. Avalara is able to handle California operating state updates currently. All operating states outside of California are to be handled by the client. Your operating state license and TTB permit have to be updated first before a project can begin. These are two items almost every state is going to ask us for. If your operating permit and TTB permit have already been updated, please attach both updated documents in your initial email. Next, your CAM will provide you with an order form for the work to be completed. This order form will give you a clear scope of the work to be performed and will include all the licenses, tax permits, bonds, and COAs needing to be updated in each state. Once this order form is signed by the client, we transition into our final step. And that is where our license modifications team will input your project into our portal and will begin processing the changes with all needed jurisdictions. Any required forms needing an owner or officer signature will be sent out to the client. We provide clear instructions on what needs to be filled in, signed, or notarized on those documents. Once required forms are completed and signed, we provide our clients with a return label back to us, and then we will submit for approval with the jurisdictions. We then, of course, follow back up to ensure all needed updates have in fact been made successfully with each state. Every jurisdiction is, of course, different on what they require for certain updates, but we here at Avalara will handle it all for you. Our goal through license modification projects is to make it as easy and seamless as possible for our clients. License modifications can be time-consuming, and they do require many different steps. And we all know time equals money spent. It's Avalara's goal to assist with these more difficult, highly time-consuming projects so you can direct your time and energy on what it is you love to do, and that's running your businesses. We here at Avalara look forward to partnering with you if a license modification project is needed currently or may be needed in the near future. We want to thank you all again for joining us today. We appreciate your continued partnership, and I'm now going to direct things back over to Mimi for our Q&A portion.
Thank you so much, Ashley and Michael. So let's get into some of these audience questions. As a reminder, you can ask questions using the Ask a Question box. So first we have, this will be a question for Michael from Elizabeth. If I sign up for Avalara's beverage alcohol solution, am I automatically signed up and or paying for other solutions like professional services?
Yeah, that's a great question, Elizabeth. So what's great about Avalara's for beverage alcohol is that you can have it a la carte. And it really depends on your need. If you need more of the professional services, one of our sales executives will reach out and see if you need, a license registration or a product registration, or if you really have a pain point of, I need help filing my returns. The beautiful thing about our integration with our different e-commerce platforms is that we'll get a better understanding of like what ERP you're on, what e-commerce platform you're on, and that'll help us, if it makes sense, to basically help you grow your business and make sure that you're doing an accurate sales tax calculation to shipping to the different states across the United States that you saw where you could ship wine to. Then also doing that really important shipping validation as well. So it's completely a la carte, and it's a conversation that the sales executive will have with you depending on where you're at with your business.
Thanks, Michael. Good answer. Let's throw one over to Ashley really quickly. This one is from Natalie. If we are a new client to Avalara, can we begin a license modification project as soon as we onboard?
Yes, great question, Natalie. We're happy to assist with the license modification project at the onset of onboarding. This would be something you would want to communicate with our Go Live team initially. but this is what we're here for. This takes place frequently, actually, where a customer is onboarding and has, let's say, ownership updates or a premise address update right off the bat. Once you have onboarded, your CAM would then generate an order form for the work to be performed. We would need, your operating state permit, TTB permit, and any additional organizational documents to support the update. And once the order form is signed, our license mod team will enter the project into our portal and begin the work for you.
Got it. Thanks, Ashley. I have another one from Michael. This one is from Alan. It says, what does Avalara Beverage Alcohol offer in terms of partner integrations? I know we spoke a little bit about that earlier, Michael, but if you could get into a little bit more detail, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alan, for the question. So we have integrations and with Avatax for beverage alcohol, with partners such as VinSuite, Commerce 7. We're also partnered with Wine Direct, OrderPort. So there's a number of our partners, and it depends if you're on that specific e-commerce platform. And what that'll allow you to do is to get accurate sales tax calculations, and with particular partners, even get the Avalara shipping validation, ASV, that we mentioned. And even with particular partners, they may have the age verification application as well. So it really depends like what partner e-commerce platform you're with. And I'm more than happy to have that conversation with your beverage alcohol company, Alan, and also working with our sales executives, because that's the beauty of partnerships is with our partners that you saw on that slide, we know our businesses extremely well to best help you streamline your operations and be more efficient using technology.
Thanks, Michael. I have one last one for you, Michael. This one is from Patrick. What's your advice for a new wine marketplace coming online?
That's I don't know if I have advice, but what I would say is that definitely talk to us. We have experience working with wine marketplaces, and there's definitely a lot that we would want to first understand about your business in order to make sure that you're being compliant, especially if you're, for instance, what e-commerce platform you're working with, point of sale system, where are you fulfilling orders, if you have a fulfillment partner. There's a lot of moving pieces with selling wine through the marketplace. And so that would be my advice, is to have a conversation with us so we could better understand how to best support you to make sure you're being compliant and executing your business in the wine marketplace.
Yeah, call your CAM. That's the big takeaway.
Yes.
I have another one for you, Ashley. This one comes from Todd. He asks, if Avalara handles a license cancellation project for us, but we handle our returns in-house, how does this process work?
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic question, Todd. Thank you for that. If Avalara handles a cancellation project, let's say for your licensing, but the client handles their returns in-house or elsewhere, this really just makes for a bit more cross-team collaboration. And what I mean by that is once we receive confirmation of an account closure from a state, we would then have to communicate with the client directly. So they are then able to go in and file their final returns for sales and excise tax reporting, let's say, if we're closing out direct to consumer licenses. When we have a situation like this, it's really nice to have a set kind of last date of business So for example, we like to make the last date of business within a jurisdiction the last date of the month. So let's say 4/30 of 23. So then final returns can be filed through the entire month of April. In a situation like this, communication is really just key, as Avalara wouldn't be responsible for the final return filings. So we would just want to make sure that we're working together on when licenses are for sure closed out with each of the jurisdictions.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Michael. That wraps up our Q&A portion of the presentation. But thank you both for today's presentation. And I hope everyone is walking away with some important takeaways. Just as a 411, later today, you'll receive an email with a link back to the on-demand recording and additional resources. Thank you all for attending, and this concludes today's event.